It was the 25th of June, 2024, a humid summer morning in southwest London, when the walls of HMP Wandsworth, a prison steeped in history and scandal, became the stage for something the public was never meant to see. Behind those Victorian gates, a phone camera began to record, capturing a uniformed officer and an inmate in an act that would spread across the internet within hours, an image so shocking it shook the foundations of Britain's prison system. Linda de Sousa Abreu, once a trusted officer and devoted mother, now stood at the center of a viral disgrace that blurred the line between duty and desire. How could a woman sworn to enforce the law become the symbol of its corruption? This was not a story of greed or violence, but of loneliness, manipulation, and the slow erosion of control. In a moment that stunned her colleagues, de Sousa Abreu entered a cell in full uniform, unaware that every second of her forbidden act was being secretly filmed and that it would soon reach millions. Inside, corrupt British women in uniform crossed the line. We uncover how one officer's weakness became a national scandal, exposing cracks in a system built on discipline and trust. Welcome to UK Real Crime, where Britain's prisons whisper their darkest secrets and those sworn to guard them are finally unmasked. Today, we step inside the story of Linda de Sousa Abreu and the shocking chain of events that turned one woman's vulnerability into viral infamy. First offender, Linda de Sousa Abreu, 31 years old. It was the 25th of June, 2024, when the walls of HMP Wandsworth, one of Britain's oldest and most notorious prisons, became the stage for a scandal that stunned both the justice system and the public. What began as a routine workday for 31-year-old officer Linda de Sousa Abreu spiraled into one of the most viral and humiliating episodes in the history of the British prison service. De Sousa Abreu, a mother of one from Fulham, had joined the service hoping for stability after years marked by trauma and poor mental health. But beneath her uniform and professional composure, colleagues later said she appeared vulnerable and withdrawn. That vulnerability, prosecutors argued, became the gateway to a chain of misconduct that would undermine the credibility of an entire institution. On that June morning, while on duty, de Sousa Abreu entered an inmate's cell. What followed lasted less than 5 minutes, a sexual encounter filmed by another prisoner who could be seen smoking cannabis. Within 48 hours, the footage surfaced online and spread like wildfire across social media platforms. The video, showing a uniformed officer engaging in sexual activity, triggered outrage and disbelief. Female officers reported being taunted by inmates, and even their children were mocked in schools. It has caused enormous harm to staff morale, the court later heard. By the 28th of June, de Sousa Abreu phoned the prison to say she was not coming back. Hours later, she was arrested at Heathrow Airport while attempting to board a flight to Madrid. Police seized her phone, which contained another recording, this time from her body-worn camera, of a separate sexual act committed just days earlier. She admitted to having sex with the inmate on at least 2 other occasions, explaining that prisoners had obtained her personal details, including her OnlyFans account, and had begun to manipulate her. At Isleworth Crown Court on the 6th of January, 2025, she appeared visibly fragile, as the judge described her behavior as a serious abuse of public trust. She was sentenced to 15 months in prison, with a 95-day reduction for time already served on an electronic tag. Following the verdict, the prison service announced tighter vetting and corruption prevention measures. "This behavior is completely unacceptable," a spokesperson said. "We are determined to root out those who betray public confidence." The downfall of Linda de Sousa Abreu is a painful reminder that in environments built on control and authority, the greatest danger often comes from human weakness, not defiance. Just as Wandsworth reeled from one officer's betrayal, investigators in Manchester were uncovering a case even more calculated: a young guard who turned her phone into a lifeline for a killer. Second offender, Abigail Laidlaw, 28 years old. It was a quiet spring morning in Manchester when a scandal began to unfold behind the heavy steel doors of Strangeways prison. What started as a routine internal audit would soon reveal one of the most disturbing corruption cases in recent British prison history. Between July 2021 and May 2022, Laidlaw crossed every professional boundary imaginable. Police investigators later discovered hundreds of WhatsApp messages exchanged daily with Beckford, sometimes up to 40 interactions in a single day. They spoke about love, loyalty, and logistics. In one message, Laidlaw wrote, "You've got what you want, really drugs brought in for you every day." Laidlaw had begun smuggling cannabis, cocaine, iPhones, and aftershave into HMP Manchester, concealing them on her body to evade security. In return, she received cash payments and gifts. Her manager became suspicious when she arrived at work in November 2021, wearing Beckford's wristwatch. "You appear to be prioritizing a prisoner's affection over your duty," he warned. But Laidlaw denied wrongdoing. The Northwest Regional Organized Crime Unit launched a covert investigation in July 2021. When officers raided Laidlaw's home in Bury in May 2022, they seized 2 iPhones and £2,000 in cash. Forensic analysis of her messages exposed how she had helped Beckford maintain drug operations from within his cell. Detectives said she secreted drugs regularly and smuggled them in on her person to avoid detection. At Manchester Crown Court, in March 2025, Laidlaw pleaded guilty to misconduct in a public office, 2 counts of conspiracy to convey prohibited items, and possession of criminal property. Judge Brian Morley described her actions as a betrayal of public trust that endangered lives inside the prison walls. Beckford, now 33, received an additional 6-year sentence to run concurrently with his life term. Detective Inspector Morley said, "Laidlaw was fully trained in corruption awareness. Her behavior endangered herself, her colleagues, and every inmate." The revelation shocked the public, fueling debates about security and emotional manipulation inside British prisons. From this case come lasting warnings. Emotional vulnerability can be weaponized by offenders. Professional boundaries, once crossed, destroy careers and institutions. And small compromises can escalate into serious crime. In the end, the story of Abigail Laidlaw is not just about a prison officer who fell for a killer. It is about how trust, once traded for affection, can cost a person everything. While Laidlaw blurred the line between love and law, in London, a very different form of betrayal was about to unfold. This time, it wasn't passion, it was perjury. A prison officer willing to lie under oath and derail justice itself. Third offender, Wiktoria Bujko, 30 years old. On the 17th of October 2022, inside the high-security walls of HMP Belmarsh in southeast London, a quiet act of betrayal unfolded that would derail an entire murder trial. Wiktoria Bujko, a 30-year-old prison officer from Poland, was respected by colleagues for her academic background, a master's degree in criminology, and her professionalism. Yet behind her uniform, a dangerous relationship was taking shape with one of the very men she was sworn to guard. Her name would soon become synonymous with corruption within the British justice system. Bujko had formed an illicit relationship with convicted murderer Mohammed Moshe Ali, aged 31, who was awaiting retrial for the brutal killing of 40-year-old father of 2, Ian Meyer. On that October day, as preparations were underway for a second trial, Bujko submitted a false statement to the police claiming she had overheard another inmate, Aaron Campbell, confessing to the crime. It was a complete fabrication. CCTV evidence later showed that Campbell had not even been present in the prison unit at the time of the alleged confession, but her lie was powerful enough to collapse the trial. It forced the proceedings to be abandoned, costing taxpayers millions, and delaying justice for Meyer's grieving family by an entire year. Investigators later revealed that Bujko's deceit was not born from loyalty, but from greed and manipulation. She had accepted £500, gifts, and the promise of a car from Ali, who also supplied her with drugs and meals through his associates. She was prepared to come into court and lie on oath, the presiding judge told the Old Bailey, describing her actions as a brazen plan to corrupt justice. Bujko was arrested in December 2022. During questioning, she admitted feeling vulnerable in her role, telling probation officers that prisoners were more supportive than her colleagues. This emotional isolation had made her susceptible to Ali's charm and control. By the time of her sentencing on the 28th of February 2024, she appeared pale and trembling, no longer the confident officer she once was. The judge handed her a 4-year and 8-month prison term, while Ali received a life sentence with a minimum of 36 years. Detective Chief Inspector David Wellams later commended the Meyer family for their strength and patience in the pursuit of justice. This case stands as a stark warning. Emotional vulnerability can become a weapon of exploitation. Truth can be bought with the promise of affection, and integrity, once sold, can never be reclaimed. In the end, Wiktoria Bujko's fall from grace is not just a story of corruption, it is a haunting reminder that even within walls built to contain criminals, temptation can still find its way in. And as Bujko's deceit collapsed a murder trial in South Wales, Another officer was preparing to cross a line of her own, one paved not with lies, but with drugs, addiction, and desperation. Fourth offender, Jodie Lee Beer, 30 years old. It was a cold February morning in Bridgend, South Wales, when a seemingly ordinary shift at HMP Park turned into the unravelling of a serious corruption case inside one of the country's largest private prisons. Officers had grown suspicious of a young prison guard whose behaviour had recently changed, arriving early, leaving late, and spending long periods in her car. What they discovered next would shock the UK's prison system. The officer was 30-year-old Jodie Lee Beer, from Llanharry, Rhondda and Taff. Described by colleagues as friendly but increasingly withdrawn, she had joined the prison service in January 2019. But by late 2021, investigators found she had become entangled in a criminal network operating from inside the walls she was meant to protect. Beer's downward spiral began when an inmate approached her with a proposal: bring something small into the prison in exchange for cash. At first, she refused. But under financial pressure and struggling with addiction to Class A drugs, she soon agreed. In December 2021, she began using a burner phone to coordinate with criminals outside. Within weeks, she met a contact in a lay-by near a Sainsbury's store in Bridgend, collecting packages disguised inside orange juice cartons. Her first smuggling attempt failed. She consumed the drugs herself. But on the 1st of February 2022, she tried again. This time, her car contained cocaine, cannabis, buprenorphine tablets, 10 mobile phones, SIM cards, and £5,000 in cash. The street value of the drugs inside prison was estimated between £22,000 and £62,000. South Wales police, working with prison security, arrested Beer in the car park just before she entered the facility. Officers found the drugs hidden in the boot of her vehicle, carefully sealed inside the juice containers. In interview, she admitted she was skint and had become in the grip of cocaine addiction. At Merthyr Tydfil Crown Court on Friday, the 9th of August 2024, she appeared pale and trembling as the judge delivered a 6-year sentence. "You were corrupted by a prisoner," the judge said, "but you chose to betray your duty for money and drugs." Her defense described a woman overwhelmed by loss, 4 close family deaths, addiction, and postnatal stress. As she was led away, Beer quietly told her lawyer, "I just wanted to stop feeling empty." Her case prompted renewed scrutiny of corruption risks in UK prisons. Authorities vowed to strengthen vetting and mental health support for staff exposed to manipulation. The tragedy of Jodie Lee Beer reminds us that the fall from duty rarely begins with greed. It often begins with despair and the silence that follows it. But the scandal didn't stop at prison walls. The contagion of corruption crept beyond into the police force itself. One woman, once a rising star in law enforcement, would become the very thing she swore to fight. Fifth offender, Stephanie Heaps, Ramsden, 32 years old. It was in the summer of 2024, at Bolton Crown Court, that 32-year-old former police constable and prison officer Stephanie Heaps, now known as Stephanie Ramsden, stood to hear her fate. Behind her composed expression lay years of deceit, obsession, and a forbidden love that crossed every boundary of the British justice system. Heaps had once been a model recruit, with a degree in forensic psychology and a promising start in the prison service at HMP Wymot in Leyland. She was seen as intelligent, disciplined, and ambitious. But in March 2018, she met Leon Leighton Ramsden, a convicted murderer serving life for the fatal stabbing of 31-year-old Paul Gilligan. Their encounters inside the prison walls quickly became something more, a secret relationship that would soon define her downfall. Over the next 2 years, Heaps's loyalty shifted from the law to the man she was meant to guard. She communicated with Ramsden through illegal mobile phones, leaked sensitive police data, and passed information about active investigations. When she later joined Greater Manchester Police in July 2019, she lied on her vetting forms, hiding the fact that she was in a relationship with a life-sentenced murderer. Her double life deepened as she shared police intelligence and even helped Ramsden coordinate a burglary at her ex-boyfriend's home, believing he kept £60,000 in cash. The investigation began in September 2019, when Greater Manchester Police's anti-corruption unit received intelligence about Heaps's links to Ramsden. Officers uncovered phone records, financial transfers, and messages revealing her active role in laundering Ramsden's drug profits. When arrested in January 2020, she gave a no-comment interview and resigned weeks later. During sentencing, the court heard how Heaps had received gifts, including an Apple iWatch and £3,000 in cash from Ramsden's criminal operations. She later married him during a prison visit. Judge Jennifer Adams told the court, "It is clear you should never have been trusted to serve the public. You placed affection above duty and loyalty above law." Heaps' defense described her as vulnerable, emotionally dependent, and desperate for affection, noting her low self-esteem and inability to separate love from manipulation. Her former husband, now 35-year-old Ramsden, was also sentenced to 5 years and 7 months, to run concurrently with his life term. The case sparked renewed debate in the UK about corruption in law enforcement and the psychological manipulation of officers by inmates. And as the prison gates closed behind her, the story of Stephanie Heaps became a chilling reminder that even those trained to uphold justice can fall not from greed, but from the dangerous power of attachment. As Heaps' secret double life came crashing down, another officer in Greater Manchester was already repeating history, proving that temptation wears many faces, and sometimes it smiles through a uniform. Sixth offender, Choni Kenny, 27 years old. In the spring of 2025, a CCTV camera inside Forest Bank Prison in Salford captured an image that would shock the British public: a young police officer in uniform leaning forward to kiss a convicted drug dealer through the glass. The officer was 27-year-old Police Constable Choni Kenny, once a promising recruit of Greater Manchester Police. That single kiss would unravel a web of deception, corruption, and emotional manipulation stretching over 2 years. Kenny joined the force in 2020 with ambition and idealism, but behind her professional image, she was drawn into the orbit of 2 dangerous men, both seasoned criminals. The first was 28-year-old Josh Whelan, an inmate at Forest Bank Prison serving time for violent and drug-related offences. Their secret relationship began in 2021. Using illegal mobile phones, 20 were later found inside his cell. Kenny supplied Whelan with devices, messages, and confidential information. She even accessed the police database to retrieve victim statements, including one belonging to Whelan's ex-partner, who had accused him of assault. In the CCTV footage later shown in court, Kenny, dressed in her police uniform, is seen holding Whelan's face tenderly as they kiss, an image that investigators described as a moment of extraordinary betrayal. After their relationship ended, she began another with Raheem Motley, a 31-year-old associate and former schoolmate who was under police investigation for drug offences. Kenny used police systems to search his name, warned him of a planned firearms raid, and even promised to identify local grasses. By late 2024, both men were under close surveillance. Motley was extradited from Spain in October, and Whelan's phones were seized. Evidence traced every link back to Kenny: the searches, messages, and visits. She was arrested soon after. At Liverpool Crown Court on the 22nd of April 2025, the judge called her behaviour serious corruption and a shocking breach of public trust. Kenny appeared pale and visibly shaken as she was sentenced to 3 years and 9 months in prison. The courtroom fell silent as the judge added, "You let down your colleagues, your community, and the badge you wore." Detective Chief Superintendent Mike Allen told reporters, "Her accessing and sharing police data with active criminals showed a complete lack of integrity." The case reignited national debate about police corruption, emotional vulnerability, and professional boundaries. In the end, the downfall of Choni Kenny serves as a stark reminder that trust, once compromised, cannot be reclaimed, not even by those sworn to uphold it. But while some betrayals stayed hidden in text messages and databases, one officer's fall from grace would be caught in the most public way imaginable on camera, for the entire world to see. Seventh offender, Lauren McIntyre, 32 years old. It was the 7th of January, 2021, on the Isle of Wight, a cold winter day, when the walls of Albany Prison concealed a scandal that would later shock Britain's justice system. Behind those secure gates, 32-year-old Lauren McIntyre, a trusted prison officer and devoted mother of 3, had crossed every professional boundary imaginable in the name of desire, deception, and control. McIntyre, from St John's Wood Road in Ryde, had once been described by her colleagues as diligent and empathetic. But between August and December 2018, she became entangled in a forbidden relationship with Andrew Roberts, a man serving 2 life sentences for the brutal murders of his girlfriend, Louise Lom, and their 8-month-old daughter, Tia. What began as professional supervision soon spiraled into a passionate sexual relationship. McIntyre provided Roberts with her personal mobile number, sent him photographs of herself, and exchanged intimate text messages. In one of their most damning exchanges, Roberts called their encounters real hot and risky, to which McIntyre replied, "So, in risky, I like it though." But this affair was only part of a darker betrayal. McIntyre knowingly failed to report Roberts's illegal possession of a mobile phone, claiming she did so to build trust. In truth, she was being manipulated, drawn deeper into Roberts's control. The situation escalated when jealousy entered the equation. Before Roberts, McIntyre had been romantically involved with another officer, Samuel Laidlaw. Enraged by that revelation, Roberts plotted revenge. McIntyre provided him with Laidlaw's personal number and sent the chilling message, "Do what you gotta do." That same day, Roberts ambushed Laidlaw inside the prison, leaving him unconscious with severe head injuries. The investigation exposed everything: messages, photographs, and evidence of her aiding Roberts's misconduct. When confronted, McIntyre broke down, admitting guilt to 4 counts of misconduct in a public office. At the Isle of Wight Crown Court, Judge Roger Hetherington called her actions a corrosive betrayal of the public's trust and sentenced her to 3 years in prison. As the sentence was read, McIntyre appeared pale, trembling, and tearful, a stark contrast to the confident officer she had once been. Her story became a nationwide headline, a cautionary tale about emotional manipulation within positions of power. Commentators warned that love and loneliness can turn even authority into vulnerability. She wasn't coerced by force, the prosecution stated. She was corrupted by affection, and that's far more dangerous. From cases like this come harsh lessons. Never mistake emotional validation for trust. Boundaries, once crossed, rarely return. And when intimacy clouds judgment, manipulation becomes invisible until it's too late. In the end, Lauren McIntyre's downfall stands as a solemn reminder. Even within institutions built on control, the greatest threat often lies in the human heart, fragile, impulsive, and fatally unguarded. Just when the prison service thought it had seen the worst, a new scandal began to unfold, one caught not through whispers or text messages, but through a spy camera's unblinking eye. 8th offender, Shania Begum, 25 years old. It was the 22nd of September, 2022, when suspicion began to grow within the walls of HMP Birmingham. Officers had noticed something unusual: a young prison guard frequently disappearing during her shifts, often accompanied by a particular inmate. What followed would uncover one of the most scandalous breaches of trust the facility had ever seen. The officer was 25-year-old Shania Begum, a woman once regarded as diligent and polite, who had joined the prison service in December 2018. To her colleagues, she was quiet, dutiful, and devoted to caring for her ill mother and sister. But beneath that disciplined exterior, prosecutors later revealed, was a woman trapped between cultural pressure, emotional vulnerability, and manipulation. Her relationship with inmate Joshua Mullings began subtly. Mullings, assigned to maintain the store cupboard, became a regular presence in her workday. Within months, their interactions turned into flirtation, and soon, something forbidden. When rumors reached senior staff, covert surveillance cameras were installed in the cupboard, where Begum often took Mullings under the guise of supervision. The footage, recorded between the 22nd and 29th of September, captured moments of play fighting, kissing, and sexual intercourse. On 2 separate occasions, she was filmed performing a sex act on Mullings while ignoring her prison radio and being absent for nearly an hour. When confronted, Begum broke down and admitted to what she called a mistake that went too far. At Birmingham Crown Court, on the 11th of January, 2024, she appeared visibly shaken. Her defense explained she had been pressured into an arranged marriage with a controlling man and felt cherished for the first time by Mullings. The judge noted, "You were likely groomed, but you still betrayed the trust placed in you." He emphasized that her misconduct had a corrosive effect on prison integrity, leading to her immediate imprisonment for 16 months. As she was led away, Begum mouthed, "I'm sorry" to her family sitting in the public gallery. One officer later described the impact of the scandal. "It made our jobs harder. Every female officer became a target for taunts." Authorities reinforced security protocols across UK prisons following the incident, warning that similar betrayals would face the full weight of the law. The fall of Shania Begum is a sobering reminder that corruption rarely begins with greed. Sometimes it starts with loneliness, pressure, and the desperate need to feel seen. But the pattern didn't end there. In Northamptonshire, a seemingly quiet officer at one of Britain's newest super prisons was about to prove that even modern systems can't protect against ancient weaknesses: loneliness, attraction, and poor judgment. 9th offender, Toni Cole, 29 years old. It was the morning of the 13th of February, 2025, when 29-year-old prison officer Toni Cole stood inside Northampton Crown Court, her head bowed as the judge read out her sentence. Once trusted to uphold the discipline of HMP 5 Wells, one of Britain's newest super prisons, she was now at the centre of a scandal that exposed the vulnerabilities of authority, loneliness, and temptation behind bars. Cole's career began quietly. She was described as efficient, polite, and ambitious, the type of officer who stayed late and volunteered for extra shifts. But in September 2022, she began a forbidden relationship with a 28-year-old inmate under her supervision. What began as friendly conversation soon evolved into something much darker: 5 months of secret messages, intimate exchanges, and emotional dependency that would destroy her career. During the investigation, prosecutors revealed that Cole and the inmate exchanged 4,431 messages, including at least 18 video calls made through an illegal mobile phone smuggled into the facility. In those messages, she sent photographs of herself in underwear and promised to warn him of upcoming cell searches. CCTV footage later showed the inmate with his arm around her during an unauthorized overtime shift, a discovery that sealed her downfall. Cole admitted to sitting on the inmate's lap, kissing him, and spending considerable time in his company. Investigators described their messages as flirtatious, sexualized, and entirely inappropriate. When questioned, she confessed to knowing her actions were wrong, but claimed she had been emotionally manipulated. Detective Inspector Richard Cornell, who led the investigation, said after the verdict, "This case demonstrates the importance of integrity within the prison service. Those who abuse their positions of trust will face the full force of the law." At her sentencing, Cole appeared pale and trembling. The judge told her, "You endangered yourself, your colleagues, and the security of the prison. Your conduct was not a momentary lapse, it was sustained and deliberate." She was handed 12 months in prison and ordered to pay a financial surcharge of £187. The case drew attention online, sparking debate about corruption within new generation prisons and the psychological vulnerabilities of young officers in isolated work environments. As the cell door closed behind her, Toni Cole's story became another warning from inside Britain's prison walls that authority without emotional resilience can quickly become captivity of another kind. And finally, as Toni Cole's messages filled the court with shame, one of the youngest officers in the system, barely 26, would take that same fatal step, proving that corruption can start with nothing more than a phone call and a promise of love. Final offender, Katie Evans, 26 years old. It was the 4th of March, 2025, at Sheffield Crown Court, when 26-year-old Katie Evans wept silently as the judge read out her sentence. Once a promising young officer at HMP Doncaster, she was now being led away in handcuffs, her career, freedom, and reputation gone. Her story, one of manipulation, vulnerability, and betrayal of duty, would soon become another reminder of how easily power and emotion can intertwine behind prison walls. Evans had joined Doncaster Prison at just 21. Described as young and immature, she was trusted with supervising offenders twice her age. Among them was Daniel Brownlee, a hardened criminal serving 5.5 years for burglary and attempted robbery. To most, Brownlee was manipulative and calculating. But to Evans, he became something dangerously different, someone who made her feel seen. The relationship began in early 2020, escalating quickly. Within months, prison investigators uncovered over 140 calls between Evans and Brownlee. On one day alone, she phoned him 39 times. The pair exchanged love notes, coded messages, and money. Evans even referred to herself as his queen. In one conversation, she boasted of performing a sex act on him and collecting £1,000 in cannabis cash. When Brownlee was transferred, he later absconded from custody to meet her. The affair came to light, not through a confession, but by accident. During a separate anti-corruption investigation into another officer, Rio Moran, evidence surfaced of Evans's involvement. Police raided her home, uncovering letters and bank transfers linking her to Brownlee's operation. During questioning, Evans claimed she was in love and that Brownlee had promised a future together. At her sentencing, the judge told her, "You were manipulated by an experienced criminal, but you were also an adult in a position of authority. You crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed." Prosecutors argued that her misconduct had materially affected the good order and discipline of the prison. As the courtroom fell silent, Evans cried and waved at her family before being taken down to the cells, Her young daughter, now in the care of relatives, was too young to understand what had happened. Detective Constable Scott Jarvis later stated, "This case proves that those who abuse positions of trust will face the full force of the law." Katie Evans's story is a painful reminder that corruption doesn't always begin with greed. Sometimes it begins with loneliness, and in the shadow of vulnerability, even duty can lose its way. As the cell doors close and the echoes of these scandals fade into silence, one question remains: how many more stories like these are still hidden behind Britain's prison walls? From love turned to manipulation, to loyalty twisted into corruption, these cases reveal that even the keepers of the law are not immune to temptation. But this is only the beginning. At UK Real Crime, we'll continue to uncover the untold, the betrayals, obsessions, and dark truths buried deep within the justice system. So, if you don't want to miss what comes next, hit subscribe and tap the notification bell to be the first to see our next investigation. What do you think we should expose next? Leave your ideas in the comments. Your suggestion might become our next story from the shadows of the United Kingdom's most secret prisons.